Welcome to CBS Sports HQ, presented by Geico. Jenny Dell and Chris Hassel here, and we have come up on an important milestone. Officially 100 days away from the start of the NFL season.
Yes, we have an article at CBSSports.com with 100 things to know 100 days out. I picked one out for you. And
I love a good fun fact.
Producer Boney.
What do we got?
The team with the lowest win total in the league this season. The New England Patriots. How about that, Ms. Boston? The Patriots won just 4 games last season. Their win total is 4.5 this season. Nobody's is lower. In 100 days, we'll kick off the season on a Thursday night, September the 5th, with the 2-time defending champion Chiefs, Travis Kelce, Patrick Mahomes, hosting 2-time MVP Lamar Jackson and the Ravens. Let's get our quarterbacks in here. Brady, Quinn, and Kanell 100 days out. A bit of news today coming from Cincinnati. No Jamar Chase or T. Higgins at OTAs. Both of them looking for new deals. Brady, could Chase's absence and his need of a new deal force the Bengals to finally deal Higgins here?
Potentially. I mean, look, this is a precedent-setting issue for the Cincinnati Bengals. Jamar Chase's 5th-year option was picked up, so he's technically got 2 years left on his deal, and that's one of those scenarios when you have an owner, he's got to decide which players maybe he wants to break precedents for, but most teams don't want to have to think about signing guys to long-term deals until they have 1 year left on their deal. So this will be one of those moves that might be worth breaking precedent considering how good Jamar Chase has been. But you point out the issue. Really, T. Higgins is playing under the franchise tag this year, and he's the player that they probably like to get some sort of long-term deal done with if they can agree upon those terms. Now, the last thing I'll just say on this matter is I don't know that they could get both guys done. I think the more likely scenario is Chase potentially gets a long-term deal or plays out this year with the promise of getting one in the future, and then Higgins plays under the franchise tag if he isn't dealt because of the salary cap ramifications. That would be the cheapest thing moving forward. And the Bengals aren't a team that, even though they have the 9th most cap space in the NFL, they don't have a ton of cash. Remember, they doled out that big contract to Joe Burrow just about a year ago. And so the signing bonus was about $40 million last year. This year's the option bonus, which they paid $55 million in cash. So given the financial constraints for the Brown family there in Cincinnati, I don't know that they have the cash to come up with it, Danny, to be able to pay everyone and keep everyone happy. Remember that their naming rights to the stadium are Paycor Stadium now for a reason.
Yeah, this is a situation that's getting uncomfortable quickly for the Bengals ownership and front office because, you know, it'd be one thing to have one of these players upset and disgruntled and not showing up for OTAs, but to have both at the same position gives both the players a little bit more leverage here. And T. Higgins has already expressed his dissatisfaction with the franchise tag, his desire to be traded. Obviously, Jamar Chase wants to be paid. This is starting to become a little bit of an issue that I think is one to keep an eye on because it is 2 wide receivers. I'm with you. I think you find out a way to pay Jamar Chase and you figure out a way to move on from T. Higgins. I think it's pretty clear. I don't think they're in the same category. Jamar Chase is one of the best receivers in the league. But in any case, you want to get this done sooner rather than later, as you don't want these guys going into training camp. Now it's not a big deal. OTAs, mini camps, they're not that big a deal if players miss. This is one of their points of leverage, and they're clearly wielding it together. Closer you get to training camp, I think is when you'll see more motivation come into play, and there's more likelihood that we see a deal cut for one of these players, most likely Jamar Chase.
And OTAs aren't mandatory. And news that the Players Association is working to kind of get rid of this thing, get rid of OTAs and extend training camp. That could happen as soon as next season, according to our Jonathan Jones. Brady, do you think that would be a good idea?
Well, let me just first start off by saying that I don't think they're going to get rid of OTAs. They're just going to change where they land on the calendar. So what you're seeing now is in large part just going to be pushed more to the summertime leading up to training camp. So that would probably be more what we end up seeing. Because remember, you have to take into account the fact that we're going to get to 18 games. If we do get to 18 games, that means we're going to have one less preseason game. Roger Goodell has already admitted that's part of the negotiating point to get the players union to agree to 18 games. So I wouldn't mind if they moved the season to allow more of a ramp up heading into training camp. I always felt as a player, you take those 6 weeks off in between OTAs and minicamp, and when you come back for training camp, and you almost had anxiety, like you couldn't really allow yourself to go and enjoy that time off. You were still preparing, you're still staying in great shape, because you knew when you came back, you had to do a conditioning test, you had to be ready to ramp up for the start of the NFL season. So I'm all for adjusting the calendar for a lot of these athletes moving forward, but basically what you're seeing now this time of the year, you're just not going to see it in May and June. It's going to get bumped up to really it's going to be in July as we head into then August and then into the regular season.
I tell you, this can be frustrating for me as a former player. I don't know how you feel about it, Brady, but the things that the players I think should be fighting for are better benefits, maybe a bigger slice of the pie, like things that really matter. And yet we always go back to these issues like more time off. I mean, it wasn't that long ago. Players came in the offseason in March, then it's pushed back to April, then it's pushed back to May. And the owners are like, really? That's all you guys want is just more time off in the offseason? As long as we get 18 games, who cares when you show up? They don't care about player health and safety. They don't care if players are ready to go. They just want to keep everything they've had, and that's a majority of the revenues that come through, and keep players at bay as far as long-term health care and retirement benefits and things like that. So I get frustrated when players use off-season and off time as points of leverage when I feel like they're missing the ball here and could be fighting and negotiating more important pieces of what becomes an NFL player benefits package.
100 days until the NFL season kicks off on a Thursday night in early September. Again, a list of 100 things to know at CBSSports.com. Number 84 is that the Packers and Vikings are going to challenge the Lions for the NFC North title. No mention of Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears, who some believe will be a playoff team this season. Danny, what are the expectations for this team, and what will define a success for Caleb Williams' first season in Chicago?
Well, Chris, I think the expectations are off the charts. They're as high as they've ever been for a #1 overall draft pick because of the situation that he's going to. We've discussed it a lot this offseason since the draft, since it was made official, about the weapons that he's working with and that the surrounding supporting cast is going to be one of the best out there. When you've got veteran wide receivers like DJ Moore and Keenan Allen, who they acquired this offseason. You throw in Rome Odunze, who's an incredibly talented rookie wide receiver, and DeAndre Swift in the backfield, and an offensive coordinator in Shane Waldron, who's had a ton of success with quarterbacks everywhere they've been. I think the expectation is Caleb Williams should be rookie of the year. And asking a rookie quarterback to make the playoffs is a lot to ask, but they firmly expect to be competing for a playoff spot, which I don't think is that crazy to think that they should do this. Everything is set up for Caleb Williams to succeed. We know about his skill set. His talent level is off the charts. Now it's up to him and this Bears staff to continue that, to make good decisions on the field, and for him to be a leader among men, which is always a challenge for some rookies. And I think maybe a challenge for Caleb Williams, but I think rookie of the year should be the expectation, and knocking on the playoff door, if not making the playoffs, should be a reasonable expectation as well.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, winning football games, having winning records should be part of that conversation. Maybe knocking on the door of playoffs. I think with every team in the NFC North, you could probably talk about a flaw that each one of the teams has. Even as good as Detroit looked at last year, can they replicate it? Can they stay up on top of that? For the Packers, that's a young team that wasn't overly active in the offseason. Are they going to be able to continue their pathward of success we saw in the second half of the year? And for Minnesota, a lot of turnover. New quarterback. It's probably going to be J.J. McCarthy at some point, even though he's not even taking second-team reps right now. He's down third string, according to the reports out of the OTAs and minicamp. And you lose Danielle Hunter, you get Dallas Turner. What does that look like on defense? Are they able to replicate the same amount of pressure we saw? But for the Bears, look, they improved the wide receiver group out around the quarterback position, bringing in Keenan Allen, drafting Rome Odunze. We saw the improvements of the offensive line, too, this offseason. Those are the positives. My question are what are the negatives? And that's really, look, it's a rookie quarterback. You never really know what to expect. But Matt Eberflus's job, is it maybe on the line, depending on how things start off, how things go this season? If that's the case, then you're talking about a new coaching staff, a new offense, potentially looking at 2025. Look, the Chicago market is tough. It's an awesome fan base, but when things aren't going well, too, they're going to be looking for some sort of change. And you've got a defensive-minded head coach that so far hasn't been able to get the wins that they'd like. Chris, I mean, you're a Chicago Bears fan. I mean, are you satisfied so far with what you've seen from Matt Eberflus, or would you say if they get off to a slow start, he's going to be on the hot seat?
I think my expectations are a little bit tampered just because I'm a glass half empty fan. I'm a Bears fan. Boney, our producer, asked me, like, what are my expectations before the show? I said, I want a winning season. I want an offense that's somewhat good. I mean, that's something that I've been starved for. The best quarterback the Bears have had in my lifetime is either Eric Kramer or Jay Cutler. So I just want to see improvement. Like, there's light at the end of the tunnel. Doesn't necessarily have to be the postseason, but I think a winning record, as you said, Brady, is something to shoot for.
How much of that, Chris, has to do with the fact that you're also an Iowa Hawkeyes fan? So your definition of good offense could vary considering all the pain.
Look, I don't need to see much, okay? Just some quarterbacks throwing the ball into the end zone and wide receivers catching them. That's all I need, Brady and Danny. From a quarterback getting a rookie start at the start of the year in Caleb Williams to a veteran quarterback getting a fresh start. That's Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh. Brady, we talked about this yesterday a little bit. Is Russ going to look more like the Denver version we saw the last 2 years, extremely disappointing, or the borderline Hall of Fame version that we saw in Seattle where he won a Super Bowl?
I think it'll be somewhere in the middle of his last year in Denver and then what we saw in Seattle. And the reason why I say that is this. He didn't make remarkable improvement from what was a disastrous first year in Denver to then year one with Sean Payton. But remember, he was learning a new system for the second year in a row. That's tough after you play almost a decade in Seattle. Now, the strengths and the positives of Arthur Smith being their offensive coordinator is it's what got him the head coaching job with the Atlanta Falcons, was his ability to work with another veteran, Ryan Tannehill, when he left the Miami Dolphins to go to the Tennessee Titans for an opportunity to start and play there. And I thought he put together an offensive system that played to his strengths. It didn't ask him to do everything, but it asked him to make some plays when called upon, and he did that. And it also incorporated some of his athleticism with some quarterback run game as well, which Russell Wilson is capable of. Maybe not as fleet of foot as he once was in his career, but definitely is still capable of every once in a while on third down and in the red zone or on a pass play, taking off, scrambling, and making something happen. So I think Arthur Smith will lean into that, and I think we'll see a better version of Russell Wilson in Pittsburgh than what we saw from him in Denver the past 2 years.
Russell Wilson turns 36 this year, just like Brady and me and some others in our building. Aaron Rodgers turns 40 this upcoming season. Danny, you can remember that back then. What kind of position do you think the Jets are going to be in when Rodgers' birthday rolls around in early December?
I think both of these teams we're just talking about, the Steelers and Jets, from both of these quarterbacks, Hall of Famers, Aaron Rodgers, one of the best to ever play. They're not asking either one of these quarterbacks, Russell Wilson or Aaron Rodgers, to go out there and replicate the MVP form of throwing for 40-plus touchdown passes and close to 5,000 yards. They just want more stability out of the position, and that's what I think they're going to get from Aaron Rodgers. I think you'll see him return to form where he is making incredibly smart decisions with the football. I don't know if you'll get the off-the-cuff improvising Aaron Rodgers, but will get one of the best decision makers we've ever seen in the history of the game. I mean, we have to remember he's the most efficient quarterback over the course of his 20-year career, and he's got a touchdown to interception ratio of almost 5-1. He takes care of the football, which will be welcome news to the Jets as their defense, tries to get back to its dominant form and just get some stability on the offensive side of the ball, which I do think they'll get. And as much as we've talked about their offensive line, I think a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, who knows where to get rid of the ball quickly, knows how to redirect traffic up front, doesn't panic and put you in worse situation, is just what the Jets needed. So I think they'll be a playoff team this year, and you'll see that big upgrade they were hoping to get last year before Aaron Rodgers went down.
All right, it is time to get more with Geico, and here's a scary thought. We might get a lot more out of Patrick Mahomes in that Chiefs passing game this season with the additions of Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy. Brady, is that deep ball going to return, and how successful could they be over the top?
Yeah, I think it could be. Has the potential, obviously, but we've seen some fast players get drafted to Kansas City and it not really work out in years past. But, Hollywood Brown's a veteran. He's proven himself in this league. It's just a matter of how fast he can get on the same page with Patrick Mahomes. And for Xavier Worthy, he's slight of size, but we know how fast he is, setting the all-time combine record for the 40-yard dash. So it really comes down to how fast can they get him up to speed, and if he can adjust to the coverages he's going to see at the NFL level. The question I really have is more for defense. How do you want to try to defend this team? With two guys that may be the two fastest on the field on any given week, are you going to play to stop or prevent the deep ball, or are you going to make them prove it first, given both guys are new to this team? I mean, you still have Travis Kelce, who's a future Hall of Famer. You can't just give easy catches and yards to him, in the center or in the short intermediate passing game of the defense, which we saw happen so often last year. And you still got to be careful about the run game. I mean, Isaiah Pacheco in this Chiefs offense is still capable of running the football. So this offense now provides you so many issues that it's going to be fascinating to see which teams want to pick their poison and who they really want to put the pressure on. If it's me, I'm going to try to take away the big plays, the deep passes, and Kelce if I can, and see if the Chiefs want to run the football, which we know even versus a lot of those cover two shells, Danny, they still don't want to elect to do that. So it's going to be fascinating to watch just how good this offense is and if it gets back to its old ways back when they had Tyreek Hill.
No doubt, Brady. I think that's going to be interesting to see what defenses try to do. And I think the thing I would do if I'm defending Patrick Mahomes, those gash plays, the 20-yard plus pass plays down the field, those are such backbreakers. The one thing that Patrick Mahomes has been tested in and hasn't always passed with flying colors is forcing his patience. He loves the big play threat. He loves to work the ball downfield. As much as you would want to try to keep people in front of you, make them drive the length of the field, but it'll get that much more challenging because Andy Reid has been pretty vocal about wanting to get some of those big plays back. Now they've got that speed threat back there. It'll be really interesting to see that chess match that takes place between Andy Reid and every defense he goes against, realizing the weapons they have, are they going to try to maximize them?
Despite the fact that the Chiefs are the two-time defending champions, they are not the favorites to win the Super Bowl this upcoming season. The Chiefs at 6-1. Right behind them, it's the Ravens at plus 950. They will play 100 days from tonight on Thursday night to open the season. The 49ers, who are the favorites, will have the final game of Week 1 on Monday Night Football against Aaron Rodgers and the Jets.
Back here on HQ, 100 days away from the NFL season, we have some big games to look forward to in Week 1. Starting off with a bang with Patrick Mahomes against Lamar Jackson. We obviously have some bad blood there, considering Kansas City prevented Baltimore from reaching the Super Bowl. So all eyes are on the defending champs and on Baltimore as well entering 2024. We're going to kick it off with the reigning MVP and Lamar Jackson and the Ravens defense hungry to avenge that loss in the AFC title game. And it's all going down Week 1 in Kansas City. Brady, Quinn, and Danny Kanell back with us now. What a way to start off this season. Two of the most talented teams in the AFC, both coming into 2024 with just high expectations there. Brady, what are you most looking forward to in that one?
I'm curious for a couple things with both teams. I mean, for Kansas City, let's remember they lost last year at home to the Detroit Lions to kick off the season. And the difficulty for doing that this season is Week 2, well, you follow up with the Cincinnati Bengals. And that's obviously always been a difficult task for the Chiefs. If there's been one team that's kind of been their Achilles heel, you could probably make the case it's been Joe Burrow and the Bengals, assuming Joe Burrow is healthy. But nonetheless, this revamped offense we just talked about in the last block, I can't wait to see how a defense like the Baltimore Ravens is going to be able to withstand so much speed, so much talent on that side of the ball. And then for Baltimore, it's pretty simple. Derrick Henry, the Baltimore Ravens offense. How's Todd Monken going to utilize him? We obviously saw them open things up more from a passing standpoint last year. But when you have a back like Derrick Henry, you got to feed this guy the ball. And then think about what that's going to look like with the potential of Lamar Jackson keeping the football. So I can't wait for both offenses to see what they're going to be like in this particular matchup.
Yeah, to me, I think this is all about the Ravens and the addition of Derrick Henry. I mean, for whatever reason in that playoff game, they just completely abandoned the run. And that was one of the more shocking things to watch unfold, is the Ravens have been so run heavy. Even before Todd Monken came in and revamped this offense, they've always been one that hasn't shied away from running it. And Derrick Henry comes to town as one of the prize pieces of this offseason. What does he look like? What sort of schemes do they look? Do you get the downhill running Derrick Henry that we saw in Tennessee? Do we see RPO action with Lamar Jackson sticking at his belly? How tough does that make it to defend Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson together? I think Derrick Henry is going to love going against defenses that will not be able to put 8 and 9 men in the box, saying Darren, whatever quarterback he's been paired with in Tennessee for the last decade, to now all of a sudden have one of the most dynamic players. I think this is all about the Ravens offense, because We talked a lot about the Chiefs. We know we're going to get out of Mahomes, Kelsey, and company, even with those new speed pieces. I think this is more about the Ravens and what they look like offensively with Derrick Henry.
All about the Ravens for you, but defending Super Bowl champs are 14-5 in NFL kickoff games, so we'll see what happens with Kansas City in that one. We have a trend going in the NFL. I'm sure everyone is aware of it. Number 1 overall picks just struggling. You look at the last 3, you got Bryce Young, Trayvon Walker, Trevor Lawrence. Haven't exactly lived up to the hype there. So we're going to break that trend this season, right? Number 1 overall pick, Caleb Williams, making his NFL debut at home, Soldier Field, going up against the Titans. Brady, what are realistic expectations for him?
Yeah, I think realistic, going and being offensive rookie of the year. You heard Danny say that just a few moments ago, and then try to lead this team to a winning record. I think they're talented enough on offense, and to kick off the season, you're playing a team that's, at least as far as the betting outlook, has an over-under win total at 6.5. That's 3rd worst in the league. So there's not high expectations for the Tennessee Titans. And this is a defense that last year was in the bottom half of the league. And obviously has a new head coach in Brian Callahan. So we'll see what kind of growing pains there are there. And so I'm expecting bigger things from Caleb Williams. And I think this is a great team to start off against, despite the record of number 1 overall picks in their debuts. And on the flip side of this matchup, I'm just curious to see what Will Levis is going to look like. Now they've got Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd to go along with DeAndre Hopkins. They've addressed some of their issues on the offensive line. We know Pete Prisco is high on Will Levis. This could be the year, though, where we get to find out whether or not Will Levis is going to be the guy there in Tennessee.
Oh, unequivocally, this is the year that the Titans want to find out. You mentioned the Bears, the expectation. They should win this game. They're a 4.5-point favorite to kick off the Caleb Williams era. And as much as we talk about different quarterbacks and 6 first-round quarterbacks taken in the top 12, of all of them, there is zero doubt who's going to start this game for the Bears. While some organizations might have quarterback competitions, this is Caleb Williams' team. His expectation is to come in and start flourishing right away, even though we know that rookie quarterbacks tend to sputter out of the gate. So to me, that'll be very curious. What happens if they lose that first game and Caleb Williams does struggle? What kind of panic will be in Chicago surrounding that one? But I think they'll be able to take care of their business at home. And also, I'm very curious to see what Will Levis looks like. He is unequivocally the starting quarterback for them. He's been handed the reins. They hired a coach to help mold him, although he's not going to have the run game. We just talked about Derrick Henry no longer there. That, to me, is going to be fascinating. What does Will Levis look like? So a couple of young quarterbacks going toe-to-toe should be a really fun, possibly sloppy matchup in week 1.
We got to see what happens with those fans out there. You have the glass half full, glass half empty.
Yeah, I'm the empty one.
Chris Hassel always is. I feel like more people are half full, though, with Caleb Williams over there. We'll see.
That's good. That makes me more unique, right?
You're special, that's for sure. All right. Also special, Jim Harbaugh. He's a special man. His triumphant return to the pros after dominating and winning the national title at Michigan. Harbaugh and the Chargers, they're going to kick off this season by hosting the Raiders in week 1. Brady, do you think he just slides right back into that NFL world?
I think so, although I think there'll be a little more growing pains than I think maybe most realize for the Chargers, only because this roster doesn't have much depth. This has been a team that's battled injuries for years, so hopefully they're able to stay healthy. If they are, then we'll see what kind of transition there is. The most interesting part is, if you look at Justin Herbert's career, they have slung the football around the field every single year that he's been the starter there, really since his rookie year. And now you've got a guy in Jim Harbaugh who we know loves to run the football, loves to dominate the line of scrimmage, the battle in the trenches, if you will. So what does that mean for Justin Herbert? What does that mean for this offense? And on the flip side, I think you're looking at a Las Vegas team that, are they really going to go into the season with Aiden O'Connell and Gardner Minshew? If that's the case, probably not a great season outlook. We'll see what things look like, for them in this specific matchup early on. But all the attention, all the eyes are going to be on Jim Harbaugh and what his debut looks like in his return to the NFL, and potentially taking a team that is talented, especially when you look at their first string starters. But let's see if they can make the most of this team, get them to the playoffs, and can't make a run.
I think still most of us are flabbergasted that the Raiders did not take one of these quarterbacks in the first round. They didn't make any sort of move, and they appear to be happy going into what looks like the worst quarterback room in the entire NFL. I know there's some veterans there, and I like Gardner Minshew as much as anybody, but he hasn't proven to be able to be a stable force or a franchise quarterback that can win you very many games. And Aiden O'Connell looked in over his head most of the season when he played last year. So I think Antonio Pierce and the Raiders could be in for a long season, but I'm looking at the Chargers. And I think the one thing that will be very clear from the get-go is the Chargers will have an identity around Jim Harbaugh. Everywhere he has been, he has had a toughness and a physicality that his team has embraced. And sometimes it rubs NFL players the wrong way, right? Some of that hard work and the work ethic and grinding it out and having that enthusiasm unknown to mankind every single day can drain and drain players. But it usually works off the bat before they get tired of it. So I think this team will have a very clear-cut identity running the football, which I do think will be interesting because you mentioned it. Justin Herbert, one of the most talented passers of this game. Does he translate and trade off some of the passing yardage and statistics for wins? I would think any quarterback would like to do that. And we'll see if that's what it translates. Lesser passing, yardage for Herbert, but more wins in the win column.
All the college players I talked to at Michigan, they loved having Harbaugh as their coach. It'll be interesting to see how it transforms over to the NFL, what the players think over there. All right, we have 9 playoff rematches this season for the Rams and the Lions. Week 1, reminder, Detroit won 24-23 against the Rams in the 2023 wildcard game. Stafford's first game back in Detroit. What can we expect from the 2024 rematch, Brady?
I think a lot of hype again around, I guess you'd say a rivalry, if you will, in part because of the Stafford-Goff trade and dealings. And obviously Goff got the better of Stafford. Even though Stafford has the Super Bowl ring, it's a what have you done for me lately league. And Goff beat him head-to-head, and he just got his contract re-upped. Meanwhile, Matthew Stafford's in his own contract dispute of sorts. So this is one of those battles where it's going to be headlined by both quarterbacks. But I'll say this. These are 2 of the better constructed rosters, probably more recently the Rams, and that young talent that we saw last year, especially on defense, really stepping up. With a coach like Sean McVay, don't count them out as being a sneaky contender this year in the playoffs. And meanwhile, the Lions, I think, have a lot to prove as to whether or not they can stay atop of the NFC North and get back on top in the NFC with a shot of going to the Super Bowl. We know how hard it is to maintain that sort of success that we saw from them last year, but it all starts week 1 versus another very familiar opponent.
Last but certainly not least, Aaron Rodgers back in the Bay Area. Monday Night Football taking on the Niners in his return. A moment Jets fans they've been dreaming of since 4 snaps into the 2023 season. So Rodgers is ready. Jets fans are ready. Brady, what are you hoping to see from him in that Week 1 matchup?
I just play the entire game. I mean, that's all I'm really asking for. It's not much. We had 4 plays into the Week 1 debut last year. I just want to see what he looks like against what basically was his arch nemesis, if you will, throughout the course of his career with the Green Bay Packers. So I want to finally see this Jets roster with a retooled offensive line, more weapons out around Garrett Wilson on the outside, and with a healthy Aaron Rodgers. That's all I care about in this matchup.
I feel the exact same way. I'll throw in another one, too. I think, Aaron Rodgers has been making the rounds on social media, on various podcasts, YouTube shows, wherever it is. He's talked about anything but football, it almost feels. And I bet Jets fans will welcome him back once they see him actually complete some passes, finish out a game. And we'll see what he does behind this retooled offensive line, which still has a lot of question marks, including the rookie draft pick, Oli Fashanu from Penn State. So I'm curious to see, not only does he stay healthy, but does he return to form, and are they competitive in this matchup against this preseason Super Bowl favorite? So I think everyone wishes, hey, let's get Aaron Rodgers healthy, and let's get him back to focusing on football, where he has a lot of polarizing opinions that I'm sure even Jets fans are like, all right, enough already. Let's get back to football.
I think that's exactly what Jets fans are hoping for as well. And as Brady said, just want to see a complete game from him out there, not getting any injuries. Brady, Quinn, Danny Kanell, 100 days away from NFL Week 1. We appreciate the insight, guys. And of course, on CBS, we're going to have some great games on Sunday. You can see the Cardinals and the Bills. That's at 1 p.m., as well as the Texans and the Colts, the Patriots and the Bengals, and the Jags Dolphins game. And then at that 4:05 p.m. window, Raiders, Chargers, and Broncos, Seahawks. You can catch those games on CBS.